Welcome back to First Things First. Eric Mangini is back with us. He went
Good to see you, Coach.
Worked out.
Double handshake.
Yeah, of course.
Must be Super Bowl week.
We missed you last week, so I got to.
Guess what happens if you come back a third time? Don't be surprised if he keeps touching you. All right, let's talk relationships, Coach. In the wake of a big quarterback move. What? You know the expression.
You know it.
Go or get off the pot. Well, the Washington Redskins finally got off the pot after years of marginal interest in Kirk Cousins refusing to sign him to a long-term deal. They finally are reportedly letting him walk. The Kansas City Chiefs, fresh off their first-round playoff boot, are trading Alex Smith to Washington. Start with you, CC. What do you think? Was this a good move for Washington?
It's going to be hard to judge, is it a good move just right off the bat? Like Alex Smith, like what are you getting compared to Kirk Cousins?
Right.
Kirk Cousins is from a numbers standpoint. Like we're comparing the numbers. Alex Smith, man, he would have to really play some great football to duplicate what Kirk's done in the last 3 years. So Washington has established, and I always have respect to this, the coach wants a certain quarterback. He's decided that Kirk Cousins, that's why they franchised him, wasn't the long-term answer. So Alex Smith is his guy. So I believe Jay Gruden, what he sees in Alex Smith, that he can bring out even more football than Andy Reid could bring out in him. It's going to be hard for me to envision that when he's playing with personnel that's less dynamic than the running backs and wide receivers and tight end that were in Kansas City.
But you mentioned, Coach, during the break, and said, like, the certainty. Like, I said to you before off camera, I was like, man, I don't understand what Washington did. And your exact words to me were, I totally get it. Why do you totally get it?
Well, for both franchises, they go into free agency and they go into the draft and they know where they are. So with Washington, they weren't going to get a deal done with Kirk Cousins. And even if they did, the deal would have been substantially more money than what they have to pay for Alex Smith. So this gives them a guy that's very similar, and I would argue, better to this point than Kirk Cousins has been. And they know what it's going to cost. And they can plan now accordingly going into the next two phases. For Kansas City, they get a third-round draft pick. They get a young corner. They free up $17 million as an organization. They know where they're headed as well. So that's why I think this works for everybody involved, and also the quarterbacks. Alex knows where he's going to be. Kirk knows he's going to hit the open market. I think it works for everybody.
I want to follow up one thing on Washington's side. Washington, Kirk has the really good year 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, pardon me. They franchise him. He follows that up with 2 years ago having an outstanding year, a better year than the year before, nearly 5,000 yards passing, they had a 97 quarterback rating. When you franchise a guy, he answers by staying healthy and playing great. If you're not going to sign him to a long-term deal then, don't you know he's not going to be your guy? Like, my question is about the second straight franchise tag and then end up not only not getting anything for Kirk Cousins, but having to end up give up things for a quarterback very similar to him.
Well, sometimes it's a function of what is your alternative. And if you don't have a better alternative at the time, then you got to franchise them. And it's a little bit like getting engaged. You're not getting married. You're showing that there's commitment there, but you're not quite getting married. So they had a long. Well, I'm saying they had a 2-year engagement. At the end of the day, it didn't work out, and now they put a ring on.
So Alex
Not only they leave him at the altar, they brought a different woman to the altar and everything.
Completely.
Yeah,
I like Coach
Mangini.
I'm
married to Pat Mahomes.
No, totally. Listen. Hashtag put a ring on it.
Put a ring on it.
Coach, what was it about Kirk Cousins besides the money that they just didn't like? He performed well for him. He did it well he did everything they asked him to do, basically, and he stayed pretty injury-free.
Well, we don't know if he did everything they asked him to do. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what type of relationship he has with the head coach.
We'll just say he played well enough from what we saw.
Yeah, and again, it's from what we saw, but putting it into the context of what the game plan was, what the expectations were, what his leadership was in the locker room, and I don't know him. I've heard good things about him. But from a head coaching perspective, you got to look at it and say, okay, is this the guy that I want to lead the franchise? Is this the force multiplier that I want at the quarterback position? Is this the person that I think can take us not only to the Super Bowl in the next year, but give us a chance each year to compete at a high level? And if you don't have a conviction, then it is really time to move on.
We're in a weird place in the NFL where there's only 5 teams I can find that I know need a quarterback, because so many teams have drafted quarterbacks in the last few years, and the older quarterbacks aren't retiring. You know, Brady's still playing, Bree's still playing. So Denver, Arizona, the Bills, the Jets, and the Browns are the 5 teams that we know go into this offseason needing a quarterback, because the Bills have made it clear they don't believe in Tyrod Taylor long term, and the other teams just don't have one. Is there one team in particular that you think is a good fit for Kirk Cousins of those 5?
Look, again, it comes down to alternatives. You've got to look at where you're drafting, who you feel like you can get in the draft, whether or not you believe that that pick is going to be better long-term than Kirk Cousins. Because the thing is, he's not coming cheap. So you're going to have to pay a lot of money to get him there.
And multiple years.
Multiple years. So it is a gigantic commitment. And whenever you start paying quarterbacks $25, $30 million, whatever it's going to be, it gives you less ammunition to go and improve the rest of the team. So if you're a club like Cleveland, you feel with that #1 pick, or what do they have, the 4 as well?
Number 1 and 4.
1 and 4, you can get a guy that can be your franchise quarterback. I think you'd want to go that way if you could.
Yeah, and Nick, that's been one of your things. You've talked about how teams have how franchises have struggled once they make that big commitment to the quarterback. We saw that in Baltimore with Flacco. We saw that with Atlanta. It's hard to distribute the rest of the cash.
We saw that with every team with Osweiler.
Yeah, right.
I mean, because they eat up so much of the cap, it's hard to put a championship team around what Coach is saying.
The Browns, to me, are the one potential exception, because they have so much cap space, and they have so many future draft picks. They have the 1, the 4, the 33, the 35, and either 61 or 62. That's just next year. So they're going to be able to have guys on cheap contracts. 30 seconds follow-up. Let me ask a different way. Those 5 teams, they all offer Kirk the exact same deal, whatever the money is. Denver, Arizona, Bills, Jets, Cleveland. If you're counseling and the money's the same everywhere, where do you think would be the best place for him as a player?
Oh, my God. You give me a question that you want to answer in 30 seconds.
Well, now you have 20.
With 5 variables
15.
and not understanding what the other factors are around it. To me, it again is going to be the fit of the offense with him going there, and also whether or not he feels there's a commitment to, to building the way that he sees. He's got tons of leverage here.
It's too thoughtful. The answer is Arizona. Thank you, Coach.
Okay. Someone just slid. Why don't you slide me one of those 8,000 pieces of paper and write in big letters, Arizona.
Coach, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you, Coach.
Much appreciated. Hey, Cowboys tight end Jason Witten is going to join us in about 15 minutes, but we're back with more right after this. First
Coach,
things first.
spicy. Hashtag put a ring on. We're engaged. We're not getting married.
No one knows where it comes from.